But the key is to take advantage of that statement, right? And capitalize on that moment and help him understand that we're on the same page, and eventually, I would say 98% of the time, it takes some time, but they'll come around and understand what better means now. It's not
It's changing their perception.
changing perceptions of what better means.
I
So
mean, better can mean different things in a case where you don't have terminal illness too.
Right.
I mean, I think that we incorporate that a little bit more easily into the case where somebody comes in, let's say with pneumonia, and we're trying to get a gauge on that person's individual priorities in terms of whether they want to be extremely cautious about staying a longer time, or whether they want to get out at the first possible moment to go home and sleep in their bed.
Right.
And I think that we get their feedback on issues like that actually relatively frequently.
Right.
And we incorporate it into our plans,
Mhm.
even if we wouldn't necessarily act the same way.
Right.
So when you hear the phrase, "I want her to get better," I mean, it's sort of, it's a very
So what does
vague
better mean
thing.
for
Yeah,
you?
you have to ask them what better means.
Right, what are,
Does better mean that she's gonna start doing
And-
cartwheels? Or does better mean
Right.
getting her maybe home?
or this patient,
Or not in pain, not grimacing anymore?
this patient has been here a long time. I know you've been, so many different doctors have been involved. Is it okay if we take 5 minutes out to re-summarize what's been going on? And what's your understanding? Oh, she just has A, B, C, and D. And then you say, well, let's talk about A, B, C, and D. Is that okay? Let's talk about dementia. Can you tell me how mom was 5 years ago? Well, she wasn't really that good. I said, okay. Can we talk about what dementia means? Can we talk about the complications of dementia? Oh, okay. You break down each medical component, and you have them teach back, ask-tell-ask approach, right? Where they say, oh, so I understood what you were saying, so tell me what you understood or we talked about for dementia. And now I understand that it's advanced dementia, and patients with advanced dementia don't do well in a certain setting or whatnot. And then, what does it mean to have a tracheostomy? What does it mean to have a peg tube? Well, she'll walk. I said, can we talk about that? Is it okay if I explain the medical facts of what's going on? So, you see, it's breaking down each medical fact in their language, moving into, you absolutely give all the evidence you can, and you give your medical opinion that this certain thing is not helping based on what your goals are. Because obviously you talk about goals first. So what would you wish for your mother? Well, my mother, this is crazy, this is too much, my mother would never want to be like this, I want her to get better. Once you explain the medical condition, then you say, you know, based on what you told me, based on your goals for your mom, based on what your mom's wishes were, continuing these medical treatments would go against those wishes because these are the medical facts. You will have occasional cases of the God family, right?
Or
And-
the exploration of the relationship to the son and the mother. She
Right.
promised me she'd get better, how close will they really,
Mhm.
what is driving,
And-
sometimes the letting go part.
And that's where you get your social worker and chaplain in the room, because I am not the psychologist.
Absolutely, but I'm saying that could, when you talk about what the driving.
Right. Should we, and then.
So,
I'd just like to add something. I think it's really important at some moment with someone that they're open up a space for the person, the son, to be able to express what better means, be heard, be understood, be respected. And there was a study at Harborview Medical Center about family meetings in the ICU, and family satisfaction correlated inversely with the amount of physician speech
We talk
at
too
the
much.
meeting.
Absolutely. I'm
It's
glad you brought that up.
about listening
We
and
need to
letting other
listen.
people talk.
It's very hard. You know, when I ask my students something, I have to go 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, because, so what's your differential? Okay, so, I mean, I answer the question for them because I don't have the patience of 1,000. If you try the 3 second, 2 or 3 second rule with families, try it. Like, just bite your tongue. 2 1,000. just be silent.
You can
Silence
practice on
is-
your spouse at home.
I was just gonna say that works with husbands too.
So, silence works in letting them talk. Now, sometimes it gets derailed, but letting them speak and letting them come up with the answer.
And always in the beginning when you're asking them what, but to get into when they were like against having a goals of care discussion, well, let's talk about, you know, how we can help mom. And what, how, you know, what you, first having their understanding of the situation and then what their goals are. Just that 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it takes them to get all of that out.
It's about the phrase, and how you phrase it,
Yeah.
and letting them speak and letting them be heard. Absolutely. And then on the last one here, what specific and practical ways may still be capable of changing the management or benefiting the patient? You know, if the goals of care discussion didn't work, you don't give up. Because if you give up and the palliative care team walks away, then we did come up with an agenda. And we failed the patient and the family. Because we always say, look, these are the medical facts. The medical facts are we cannot help your mom get cured. We cannot fix this problem, but we can do a lot to support her and go with the goals that you, and I always say the goals that you mentioned. Whenever I say goals, I say the goals that you've told me. Because I didn't make those goals up. But whatever your decision is, we'll be here to support you, right? Because if we just walk away, it's a palliative care team and say, oh, they didn't get it. That was a failure of a consult. There's no such failure of a consult. You know, you do what you can. I mean, unfortunately, we're not there in our medical legal climate where we can abruptly just stop whatever we need to do. Even though the ethics consult may say doctors don't have to provide unnecessary care, we know the reality is that that's not. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, just withdraw care. We can't do that. So to answer your question about how we can still benefit the patient, I think by being there, by supporting them, and eventually, again, I would say 98% of the time, I'm not exaggerating on that number, with patients, you can win hearts and minds. And again, there's few that have their religious beliefs. But even those religious beliefs, you get a person, maybe you get an Orthodox rabbi in the room with you, right? Or a Catholic priest, a Muslim priest, whoever it is, to come in and talk with you, right? Because being in a Jesuit institution, I've learned, I'm a wannabe Jesuit, I think, that there is no such thing in the Catholic tradition which says you have to do two things.
Well, that's, yeah, all religions, I've had almost every type of religious, head of religion, you know, come in, and when they say, oh, my religion would absolutely not allow this, or
Right.
this, I'm like, well, let's have them, have your rabbi, have your priest, have your, come in. I've worked in Orthodox Jewish, you know, communities, you know, communities with a lot of minorities, and no head of religion, you know, at that stage of life has ever said that no, continuing is absolutely
Right.
necessary.
And then also, the key is not to, we don't splice words. And we should move on to this next case, but we don't splice words. I mean, we have to get evidence. We have to be very comfortable saying the D word. Your mom is dying. And it's unbelievable when you use that word in an empathetic way, look them straight in the eye, use the best body language you can, and say your mom is dying. And then all of a sudden they start crying in tears. We get very emotional. You let them cry. It may take a couple minutes of silence, but that word is very provocative, and we don't use it.
I had a patient, basically Catholic, she had the Catholic faith. Pronounced encephalopathy, went to the tract, hasn't been talking for 3 years, been coming in and out of the hospital. We talked about DNR, and it is still no resuscitation integrated. And she said, the Catholic faith, well, I'm not Catholic. Faithful the Lord was with me in the room. And she said, well, the Catholic faith doesn't believe in treating a patient came out. And this lady, she transferred her sister to Yonkers, so she never came back here. So, she said, I'm not doing something.
I'm sorry?
She did not sign an EMR, and she transferred the patient from the
She
nursing
saw it
home.
transferred to another hospital.
Mhm.
And they never came back to us.
I mean, that will happen,
Yeah.
no matter what you do. That will happen, but, like I said, medically, we have to be comfortable speaking in an empathetic manner of what works and what doesn't work.
And you know, honestly, from your perspective, nothing real was lost.
Right,
You're
yes.
provoking.
Right, yes.
And you're
And
sort of
we just
unroofing
know we
those
were-
issues. It would have happened somehow that way anyway.
Move on to the next case.
Yeah, so actually, I wanna go to the third case. The second case is somewhat similar to the first in that it's a composite of multiple disease processes, and speaks to issues of trust and broaching communication.
Well, what I like about case number 2 though, I know we're going to go up to number 3, but it's, how do you take care of the problem? You guys caused this problem. You need to fix him. That's beautiful. We see that all the time. So, I mean, do you wanna meld that with number 3, or?
You know, we can just do number 2. I mean, we don't have to do all of the cases for the sake of
Time.
So we can work on this one. You know, and I think this is something hospitals.
This is a good case, there are some problems that we caused here.
Right. So your service has been caring for a 77-year-old man. Have people read the cases? Are people familiar enough? I don't have to read through the whole case, or is
We
it?
just read silently to save some time, or?
Yeah, and I can summarize it pretty quickly, as this is a man with CHF, COPD, and stage 3 kidney disease, who's basically been admitted after a series of iatrogenic events, and his daughter, who's the surrogate, is very angry at the caregivers, and you know, alleges that having a hospitalist has been a detriment to him, and kind of has dug in her heels on any kind of de-escalation of care. And, you know, basically your situation is now to see how are you gonna approach this situation.
What's the root problem here? Anger. Is there legitimacy of anger? We have a broken healthcare system, we don't communicate.
Continuity of care.
Continuity of care. So, how would you approach this stuff?
You know, you actually mentioned it in your talk earlier, with a patient who was on depressors with blue toes, where I think in that case they had said we had been offered de-escalation and declined it in the past, and the patient survived, so they were wrong. Or we were given, you know, incorrect prognostic information was, I think, the example in that case. But in a case where somebody feels like the condition of a family member is a result of bad care or care that's gone wrong, you more or less have to make a separation between the facts of the situation that you're in now and the circumstances that you can't control that may have led to it.
You have to separate it out, right. But what's a key person here that we're not inviting to the table? She mentioned it herself. Where's my PCP? Right? So, first call to that PCP and say, you know, we're having a care meeting. And you talk to the daughter and say, look, you're understandably very angry, and you have a lot of legitimate reasons to be angry.